Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning's Council of Mayors for August 18th, 2020. And I am told that we are, CMAP staff will read the names of the members that have signed in and then ask any other members that haven't to let them know so we account for everybody. So Terry, are you going to read the names?
I'm just going to go down the road, Mayor. Mayor Austin.
Okay.
Mayor Austin. President Brady. Mayor Claire. President Darts.
Here.
President Scipio. President Ihorn.
Yes.
President Gallagher.
Here.
President Hayes.
I'm here.
Mayor Holland.
Here.
President Levin. President Mack. President Nunmaker. Mayor Rockingham. President Ryback.
Here.
Mayor Schuelke.
Here.
Mayor Sherwin.
Here.
President Skillman. President Standy. Mayor Tabarino, I'm sorry. Mayor Van Hoosen. President Warner.
Here.
Mayor Williams. Okay. We have a quorum.
Very good. And hopefully some others will join us in the near term here. Terry, do we have any agenda changes or other announcements?
Erin is here. She's going to talk about our move.
Yeah, I had asked that Erin talk to us about what's happening at CMAP so that all the members of the Council of Mayors have full understanding. I really admire what they're trying to do in here, but there's some time issues that are involved that I want everybody to understand why it's being done the way it is. And Erin's been kind enough to join us this morning. So is our Executive Director of Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. I'm going to recognize Erin Allman.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for having me this morning. Happy to talk with you all. I also, if you have not met before, our Chief of Staff, Amy McEwen, she's on the screen next to me. And she's really been helping us get organized around the move to the old post office. So many of you are aware that we're moving offices in the midst of a pandemic. So we have been making good progress on the move. Let me just start by saying that first and foremost, the health and safety of our partners, of our staff has been a top priority of ours. So we have continued to do the work that we've needed to do from home. And I hope that you all have found that, we haven't skipped a beat in terms of communicating with the planning liaisons across the region and helping to continue to advance our transportation programs. So as far as the work is continuing just as is, but in terms of the move, our staff was in the office at the Willis Tower last month packing up and have successfully gotten everything packed and ready to go. And this weekend, actually, we will have movers in to move our stuff from the Willis Tower to our new home at the old post office on the 4th floor. We are taking possession of the old Postmaster's historic suite. So I had hoped that we would have something here in the fall for you all to come in and view the new office and the new historic and the restoration of the Postmaster suite. We'll figure out some way virtually to engage folks here on that. But we anticipate, that we will get the move done. We'll have staff in to unpack boxes socially distanced. And then starting in September, we anticipate rolling out a permissive work policy for staff who need to go into the office to get stuff done as it relates to work. And we anticipate that continuing throughout the remainder of 2020. And to that end, we expect to continue to hold most of our meetings, well, many of our meetings virtually with folks from across the region convening virtually as one of the requirements of the Open Meetings Act modifications that we're allowed to do right now is to have myself or our chief of staff and our board chairman in the office in order to provide for, health and safety considerations related to COVID. So we do anticipate that many of our meetings will still continue to be held virtually. And I know that, we're all tired of being on Zoom, but it is the safest thing for us to be able to do. We also won't be allowing outside partners into our office for the time being as well, just considering, again, the health and safety requirements for our office. And I'll also just note too that I've been in the new space a couple times. And the building is stating that probably about 50 people a day are actually going into the office. So the same is true for the Willis Tower. So while I think we were concerned about getting downtown and having to wait in a 40-minute elevator line, every time I've gone in, I've been in the elevator by myself. So, and that's consistent with some of the surveys that we've heard from the business community or seen from the business community related to the Central Business District, as very few staff are working out of their offices downtown. And I think based on the surveys we've seen at least, that it'll be at least first quarter next year before people start to perhaps consider moving back into a more formalized work from office situation here. So that's a little bit on what we're seeing. I'll just say in terms of our work, one of the things that we've been focused on scoping right now is really thinking about how the implications, what the implications of future mobility are for our region. So given that our role is focused on transportation, we want to continue to understand what the consumer confidence in transit might do to the rest of our region as we think about sort of the spillover effects, right? On a given workday prior to the pandemic, we probably had 800,000 people taking transit to work on a daily basis. And so as return to work continues and as people sort of adjust schedules, we can't just add 800,000 more cars to our roads and not expect there to be challenges in terms of congestion and air quality in our region. So we are working on putting together a scope of work for us to engage in this conversation, to bring our transportation stakeholders together to think through how do we recover effectively from COVID, and how does transportation shift permanently or even in the midterm future moving forward. And then we've been thinking too through across what the implications are for local governments, how we can help, do some of the work that we've already been doing related to service sharing and help support you with the things that you need in order to be effective. So we've been looking at best practices from across the country and hope to sort of dig into this work further in the coming year. And then the third area where we really anticipate doing a lot of work too is on our regional economy. So together with our county partners and the city of Chicago, regional economic recovery is a top priority for everyone. I know that we all want our businesses to get back to work. So we are continuing to assist with research and analysis related to regional economic recovery. And our hope is that we'll be able to, continue to support good policies and, decision making and help, again, you all get back to some sense of normal as soon as we can. But I think that there's going to be a lot of work ahead of us in terms of the work that CMAP does. So a little bit about where we are in terms of our office move and a little bit about the work that we have going on, but I am happy to answer any questions. And I thank you for continuing to serve on this committee. It's a critical committee for us, and you're all so critical to our work and us understanding of what's actually happening in your communities and how we can help support you. So I'll just offer that, if not today, I'm happy to continue to connect and hear from you about what it is that you need from us.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is well, I guess what I'd first like to ask is there any anticipation of CMAP doing some sort of a study as to what is likely to happen to the central business district long term when companies are finding out that they don't need all the office space that they're currently using, and projecting transportation needs based upon what kind of responses we get?
Yeah, that's a great point and something that we've been thinking a lot about too. And so I think as we build out the transportation work that we're looking at, that will be part of the scenario planning process, will be to understand sort of what level of employees do continue to go back to work, because we haven't actually had good data across the country in terms of remote work because it's been done so infrequently. But I do, I hear your concerns, right? Is that many people are like, well, if we can just cut this office space, what are, there are some huge benefits in terms of budgets. So it's certainly something that we're keeping an eye on. And I know that some of the task forces that I've been on have been seriously discussing as well.
I wonder about the transit agencies, Metra Pace, CTA, Metra primarily, they've been kind of decimated from a ridership standpoint. And when you think about how much money they're spending on equipment and all that kind of stuff and improvements to the rail lines, you got to kind of wonder whether or not it wouldn't be wise to sit on our hands for a little bit to see if this really winds up going one way or another, because you could be spending a whole bunch of money to make improvements when there's no demand. And, everybody's short of money anyway, and you don't want to get ahead of yourself. Now may be a time to just sit back and watch and not go too far out in the distance. Personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that those are all the types of questions that we're hearing from across the region. I'll just make note that, their capital funds are separate from their operating funds. So they do still have the money to do the construction, but, that money wouldn't necessarily, without congressional authorization or changes, be able to be put towards anything else. So I think that's one of the reasons why they've advanced some of the projects that they have. But, again, right, the decisions that we make today are really impacting future decisions or future resources that we're going to have or not have available to us. And I know we've been thinking too, the federal transportation bill is set to expire at the end of this year. And I think we thought maybe there'd be some movement towards renewing the policies on it this year, but I anticipate that we'll probably get into some continuing resolutions related to the FAST Act after September, because I don't think anything's going to get done until after the election.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mary Einhorn, for bringing that up. That was one of the things we certainly wanted to cover, and I appreciate you getting it on the right out front here when you can. Terry has sent me some things I need to mention as we begin the meeting. One is the meeting will be recorded. Make sure you use your full name in the GoToMeeting. You can edit your name by going to the top corner of the screen and click the GoToMeeting edit name. Please use the mute function through the GoToMeeting on your phone. This will help eliminate excessive background noise. Those on the phone can also press *6 to mute and unmute themselves. If you have any questions during the meeting, please use the chat box, which the staff will be monitoring. When making a motion, please include your name so the staff can properly record it. All votes will be conducted using a roll call. So that's kind of the rules that we're going to be operating under today. And I guess the next thing is we have to have the approval of the minutes for the meeting from April 14th, 2020.
Holland makes a motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
We have a second, Mr. Chairman, Ryback.
Okay, very good. We have a motion. Do we want to take time to vote on those, or I think we can just say there's no concerns about the minutes. We'll just let the minutes stand approved as drafted.
Mayor,
Okay.
we have Mayor Schulte. We have to do a roll call vote for it. I'm sorry.
All right. I'm just trying to expedite things. All right. Well, then call the roll.
All right, Jared's gonna do that for us.
Okay.
Right. Great. President Austin. President Austin?
He may be on mute, Jared. We'll
All right.
circle back.
President Brady? Mayor Clark? President Darch?
Yes.
President DeCipio? President Einhorn?
Yes.
President Gallagher?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes.
Mayor Holland?
Yes.
President Levin? President Mack? President Nunemaker? Mayor Rockingham? President Ryback?
Aye.
Mayor Shelkey?
Yes.
Mayor Sherwin?
Yes.
President Skillman? President Spandy? Mayor Tamburino? Mayor Van Dusen? President Werner?
Yes.
Mayor Williams? And President Austin?
We'll have to work with him to get him off mute.
Okay, the minutes stand approved by the vote. Next item is is going to be the STP Project Selection Committee update. Sam is going to give us an update on the proposed changes and updates to the evaluation process for the next call for the project process. Tama?
Great. Thank you, Mayor Shelkey. Good morning, everyone. Over the last 3 months, the STP Project Selection Committee has been extremely busy discussing the lessons learned and making modifications to the scoring methodology for the next call for STP Shared Fund projects. Today, I'm going to go very quickly through highlights of the proposed changes. I do want to note that on the STP Project Selection Committee meeting materials webpage, all of the presentations we've made at these 3 meetings are posted, and the recordings of those meetings will be posted as well. So if anyone wants to dig deeper, after today's meeting, those materials are available. So diving right in, first thing we've talked about is inclusion in plans. Rather than receiving up to 10 points for a project or project type being included in an adopted planning document, this criterion will become an eligibility requirement for the next call for projects. So to be eligible for funding consideration, either the project or the project type must be included in an adopted plan. I do want to note that this shift frees up 10 points to be added somewhere else in the scoring. And to say that, it's worth noting that of the 71 projects that applied in the last cycle, only 1 project may have been eliminated and deemed ineligible due to this. So it seems reasonable to move this to an eligibility criteria and free up those points for other things. Project categories, rather than evaluating projects under every possible category as we did the last time, we are going to ask applicants to select the category for evaluation during this cycle. To facilitate this, we are adding guidance to the application booklet that discusses the needs to be addressed by each project type, as well as providing examples of project scope for those projects. Clarifying language is also going to be added to the application booklet in the project readiness section to clarify how points are awarded for land acquisition and phase 2 engineering for transit projects, as well as providing examples of financial commitment scoring where we received quite a few questions during the last cycle. Stepping through the project types now, the first that we've talked about is our transit station projects. In the last calls for projects, these were scored based on the condition of the station, as well as any passenger capacity deficiencies at the station. For the upcoming call, we're going to add bicycle pedestrian access to stations as part of these projects, where these projects can either improve the station, provide bicycle pedestrian access to the station, or do both. Station improvements will be scored only on the station condition. Bike ped access only will be scored only on the access elements. And then projects that include both of those improvements to the station and bike ped access would be scored on both elements. Also, in addition to Metro and CTA train stations, bus terminals, transfer points, park and ride lots that serve express buses things like the bus on shoulders routes, the new park and ride lots along the Jane Addams Tollway. Those will be considered as transit stations and be eligible for funding under this project category in that next round. The next project type is a new one. We received a lot of comments in the last cycle that bicycle and pedestrian projects ought to be considered as part of this regional fund source. So what's being proposed is that projects that remove a barrier, such as a physically divided street or railroad tracks or even a body of water that serve as a barrier to bike and ped movement, should be an eligible project type. So a lot of interest in getting bicyclists and pedestrians across those physical barriers. These projects will be scored on their route characteristics, the market for the facility in the project area, and the degree to which the projects complete the regional greenways and trails plan. The next category is bridge projects. There's no changes to how we evaluate the existing conditions of these projects. That's related to the sufficiency rating of the bridge. However, the improvement portion of the score is going to dig a little deeper this time into improvements to the individual components of the bridge, like the deck, superstructure, and substructure, as well as improvements to load posting and things like insufficient lane width and traffic features such as guardrails that are a big part of bridges. Next is truck route improvement projects, which were scored similar to road reconstructions and expansions in the last cycle, based on their pavement condition, safety, reliability, mobility, and truck volume. But we want to recognize that geometric deficiencies on a route, such as having a load posted bridge or a vertical clearance restriction, narrow travel lanes, or insufficient turn radii, can have a huge impact on the movement of trucks. Therefore, these deficiencies and improvements to them are being added to the scoring for truck route improvement projects. The improvement scoring is also going to include points for mitigation of the negative impacts of trucks, such as including noise barriers or having loading or delivery time restrictions set up in the area of the project. So just other project types, staff is not proposing any changes for roadway reconstruction or expansion projects, and safety projects will be discussed at the next project selection committee meeting in early September. The committee's also discussed adjustments to some of the planning factors, starting with the complete streets planning factor. Our proposal is to shift from an equal weight for having a complete streets policy in place and including complete streets elements in the project to giving more weight to including those elements in the project. And instead of having an all or nothing 6 points for including elements, you'll be able to accumulate points for having more elements in the project. The freight planning factor, which was previously scored on the percentage of trucks using the road, will now be scored based on the road being included in one of these freight networks, as well as based on the project sponsor or municipality where the project is located, having policies or procedures in place to improve truck routing and permitting or delivery management strategies. So similar to the other planning factors, a little bit of a focus here on those policies and procedures. In addition to changes to complete streets and freight, staff is proposing increasing the total weight of the planning factors from 25 to 30%. So using up 5 of those points that I mentioned earlier that were made available by changing inclusion in plans, as well as using those additional weights to increase the inclusive growth from 10 points to 15 points in the overall project score. Because of the inclusion of bike ped access and transit station projects, those projects will now be scored on the green infrastructure planning factor instead of the complete streets planning factor. So I know this is a complex looking table that probably looks familiar from that last round of call for projects, just showing how the different planning factors apply to the different project types. So, as I noted earlier, coming up next, we'll be talking about safety project scoring on September 3rd, along with the concept of partial funding and council bonus points. We'll also be wrapping up some follow-up comments from prior meetings and moving toward providing a draft of the application booklet for discussion at the end of September with final application materials to be approved by the project selection committee at the end of October. So I know I moved through this pretty quickly and really hit the highlights without a lot of detail. As I mentioned, all of the details are posted with the project selection committee meeting materials. So I definitely want to invite you all to look through these, discuss them with your planning liaisons, or feel free to give myself or Jesse or Terry a call if you want to chat about any of these in details. And we can take those comments to the project selection committee. And I'm also happy to answer any questions you might have right now.
Do we have any questions of Kama?
I just have one question, and that is when we review designs and things of that nature in regards to improvements that are proposed to being made, do we ever give any thought to the impacts of design and long-term maintenance abilities, so that we're not having people design stuff that really winds up costing us a lot of money in the long term because we really didn't, maybe we were more worried about aesthetics as opposed to, maintenance and stuff like that. So we cut our overall long-term cost.
Yeah, when we evaluate the improvement scores, we do a cost benefit analysis, but it's based on the cost of constructing the project. So kind of the more elements that are included in the project, if that's complete streets elements or other things, that lowers the cost benefit score of the project. We don't look at the long-term maintenance costs. I'm not sure that being able to project those costs and weigh the benefits of those without, having a deep dive in with the sponsor to discuss their ability to maintain. I think we're making the assumption that, an applicant is taking on those expenses going forward, or they would not be applying for these projects. And that's definitely, what you point out is definitely consideration as folks are putting their applications together and, wanting to add complete streets or green infrastructure to improve the score. Well, you do have to be able to maintain those things going forward. So that's a consideration that everybody needs to make when they're applying.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Well, thank you, Kama, for your update. I think this has always been a kind of a work in progress. We're always seeking enhancements, improvements, and better ways of doing stuff. And I appreciate the staff's efforts to try to keep us on track here, because we are obviously living in an ever-changing world, much more so than I think many of us ever envisioned it would. But we got a lot going on here, and I like to think, and I know that the CMAP staff is right on top of stuff. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Moving to item 5, we got an IDOT Bureau of Local Roads report from Chad Little. Chad, are you on?
Yeah, now I am.
Okay.
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Cool. I'm just gonna, again, I don't have a lot to report. It's business as usual, but I will fill you in. We've been working remote since March, 100% from local roads. And I appreciate all the effort and help that the PLs have done, the consultants, as well as the local agencies to keep us moving ahead. Lettings, we had a lull in lettings mainly because of the funding issues, but we are picking that up. July we had 5 on the letting. September that just got posted last week. We have 3, but November we're looking around 18 to be posted, and January we're right about 22 right now with pre-final plans. So we're ramping up to keep projects moving ahead. We are being very productive working from home. We've sort of mastered the system, but again, and there's no light on the horizon here with us, even as far as when we might be back in the office, even part-time. But again, that's basically what I have. I just mainly open it up for any questions or concerns you might have with IDOT, but we are still moving ahead. We are processing agreements, processing projects, and again, appreciate all the help and effort and consideration and understanding that everybody has with the way things are working in society today.
Okay, does anybody have any questions of Chad from IDOT? You know, I just want to offer up, Chad, that I certainly out here in Kane County, we've got a couple of state-involved projects going on, and you guys couldn't have been more supportive and cooperative in what you're doing. So I'm very pleased to report, as near as I can tell from Kane County, IDOT's alive and well and doing very good work.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
All right, moving then to the item 6, which is the FY 2020 to FY 2025 STP local programs. And the PLs are going to give us a quick overview of their program.
Yeah, and this is Kama again. I'm actually going to kick this off and say that the councils and CDOT did hold calls for projects from January to March of 2020. They held their public comment periods from late May to early August, and the PLs are going to give you individual highlights, and then we'll come back and talk about regional totals and next year. So CDOT staff wasn't able to join us this morning, but they did provide some information. So I just wanted to share that they received 51 internal applications totaling over $582 million in requested funds. They are selecting 18 projects for funding at a level of $275 million, which includes 2 grandfathered projects that were in progress. The types of projects that they're doing are bridge inspections, painting, and major rehabs. Some complete streets projects for safety, streetscaping, and bike ped access, as well as their normal arterial resurfacing program and signal modernizations. Their internal approval will occur in September. So with that, I'll kick it off and let each PL talk a little bit about what's going on in their council.
Hey everyone, my name is Matt and I'm with the North Shore Council of Mayors. We received 16 applications from 8 unique sponsors totaling just over $28.4 million in requested STPL funds. Of the 16 applications, 8 projects were recommended for funding at a cost of just over $21 million. Evanston, Northfield, and Glenview are each planning on significant corridor improvements within their communities, resulting in the implementation of multi-use paths, intersection improvements with the round planned in Northfield, ADA improvements, among other enhancements and project types. The North Shore Council only provides funding for engineering 2 and construction phases. We didn't receive much in terms of public comment, but did receive some appreciated feedback from the Metropolitan Planning Council regarding ways to improve transparency throughout the project selection process. And the North Shore Council of Mayors will be approving the final recommended program on September 9th.
Thank you. Who's going to go next?
Hi,
Northwest Council?
this is Kendra Johnson. I'm the PL for the Northwest Council of Mayors. First, just want to say a quick thank you to the Northwest Council for their guidance, in particular the technical committee. This is my first year putting together a program from the call for projects. So we got a lot of good applications comprising a strong program. We received 32 applications from 12 unique sponsors, just over $58 million. And of those, 29 were recommended for funding. Variety of projects, reconstruction, resurfacing, and then some bike ped, ADA, stormwater improvements included in those projects. Most of the funding is going to go towards construction, with just 6 projects requesting phase 2 engineering and right of way. And then we received the same public comments from the Metropolitan Planning Council suggesting greater transparency, and then a couple of support for specific bike ped projects in the Northwest Council. And then the final program is scheduled for approval on September 9th, same as the North Shore Council. All right, that's it for me. Thanks.
Hi, this is Mike Ricano. I'll be going over North Central and the Central Council. The North Central Council had 26 applications from 8 unique sponsors totaling over 34 million. They had 13 projects recommended for funding, and they're funding reconstruction, resurfacing, traffic signal, and flow improvements. The phases, engineering 2 and construction engineering. And they received the same public comment from MPC as others. We approved the program in July 22nd, 2020. For the Central Council, we had 17 applications from 7 unique sponsors that totaled $28 million. We had 13 projects recommended for funding for $15 million. We're funding reconstruction, resurfacing, bike and ped, access to transit. This is also the first time that the Central Council is funding Engineering 1. We're phase 1, and we're doing the rest of the phases funding for that too. And we also received the same MPC comment. This program was also approved July 22nd.
Hi, this is Kelsey with the Southwest Council. So we received 19 applications internally. We actually received it from 0 unique sponsors, so that's a typo, sorry about that. Totaling about $39.4 million in requested STP local funds. 9 of those 19 applications were recommended for funding, totaling around $6.7 million. A lot of the projects that we received were pavement rehabilitation, resurfacing, widening streets, and sidewalk improvements. The majority of the projects that we did, or the funding that we received, were for construction or construction engineering phases. And there were no high need municipalities that applied. And the only comment that we received was if municipalities will have local match available, given the lack of revenue over the last few months, which is valid. And our scheduled approval will be at the end of September, and we did get it approved at our last Transportation Committee meeting earlier this month.
Hi, this is Leslie Feemister with South Suburban Mayors and Managers. We received 64 applications, which I believe is the highest number of anyone in all of the councils for almost $153 million. I think that has a lot to do with all of the hard work that CMAP and IDOT did to get those transportation credits available to communities that haven't been able to access these funds in the past due to lack of match money. So there was about a little over $11 million requested in those tollway credits. We will be, or we're recommended for funding for 19 projects, anything from engineering 1 to construction engineering and road reconstructions, resurfacings, even some two-way conversions and some trails. We are scheduled for approval at our Transportation Committee on September 1st.
Good morning, this is Daniel Nickelbein from DuPage Mayors and Managers. We received 44 new applications from 22 project sponsors totaling just about $47 million. We also grandfathered 26 pre-existing projects, just over $29 million. In our recommended program, it is a total of 48 recommended projects totaling a little over $61 million. 22 of those were new projects and the other 26 were the grandfather projects. Included in those 22 new projects, we had 8 resurfacings, 4 rehabilitations, 2 reconstructions, 2 intersection improvements. 6 projects were trail, standalone trail or bike pedestrian, including a couple of sidewalk gap filling projects. We only fund construction and construction engineering, and we did not receive any public comments. Our final program was approved on August 6, 2020, and we are in the process of sending out award letters. So just want to give a big thanks to all the PLs and CMAP staff for helping us get through this new process. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, this is Troy Simpson from the Kane Kendall Council of Mayors. We received a pretty good spread, 50 applications from 18 unique sponsors, totaling $74 million in requested STPL. We've grandfathered 5 phases, one including an engineering phase 2, and we recommended 31 projects for funding at a total of about $43 million. Of those projects, 2 are road expansions. One is a road widening. There are 2 roundabouts, 8 reconstructions, and 18 resurfacings. 3 of those have signal modernization scope. Very small amount of non-construction funding. We only had $200,000 in phase 2 engineering. The remainder is construction and construction engineering. Of note, 75% of our non-resurfacing projects include a bicycle facility. And of note too, only one of those is not included in our county-wide bicycle and pedestrian plan, so that's pretty cool. And we like to think it means our process went relatively smoothly. We received the same comment from the Metropolitan Planning Council with regards to transparency, specifically with project location and scope and how that's presented, but we only had 2 other public comments otherwise. And then our program is scheduled for approval at our full council meeting on August 25th.
Good morning, this is Mike Clemens from the Lake County Council. We had a large program of projects to grandfather into our new program, but we did receive 39 applications from 22 different sponsors, totaling a little over $71 million. We had 14 grandfathered projects from 8 different sponsors that totaled just under $37 million. So with those 14 grandfathered projects and 3 new applications, our top 3 scoring projects, we have 17 projects recommended for funding for a little under $40 million. Those project types are anything from resurfacing, intersection improvements, reconstructions, a roadway extension, and bridge replacements. We do have 1 phase 2 design engineering phase in our 5-year program. The rest is construction. And we did not receive any public comment during our process. And our full council is scheduled to approve the program on August 27th.
Good morning, everyone. This is Emily Dauscher with the McHenry County Council. We had 26 applications submitted by 17 different sponsors. 19 of those we recommended for full funding, including 2 grandfathered projects, and we had 2 partially funded projects. Our common project types included resurfacings, reconstructions, roundabouts, and traffic signals, and we had a few projects also include some bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. We had set aside about $300,000 for just engineering 1 and 2, in addition to construction and construction engineering. One of those partially funded projects received engineering funds only. We have 3 projects that are in high need communities. And during our public comment period, we received over 60 comments. Most of those were for a project in Spring Grove that received partial construction funding. We have approved the staff recommended program. It was at our July 23rd meeting. Thank you.
Elaine wasn't available this morning, so I'm going to wrap up for her. With the Will Council, they received 29 applications from 19 unique sponsors requesting over $60 million. They're able to recommend funding for 21 of those 29 projects, totaling about $36 million, and that does include 8 grandfathered projects. Like the others, there's a wide range of projects from widening and resurfacing to the addition of multi-use paths. Of note is a complete streets project in Romeoville, which reduces lanes, adds bike pedestrian facilities, median landscaping, and some permeable pavers. The council also notes that just under 20% of their funds are being programmed for cohort 3 and cohort 4 communities, and their scheduled approval is in September. So just to wrap us up here region-wide, if you total all of those up that the PLs just told us about, we, as a region, got 171 different sponsors requesting over $1.3 billion for more than 400 projects. $686 million was requested for 362 suburban projects. So when you take the city out, those were the requests. $609 million is recommended for programming over the next 5 years, and that includes $334 million in the suburbs. So what are the next steps with this program? Implementation and active program management will begin almost immediately. Quarterly status updates will take effect, as well as application deadlines and active reprogramming. And councils will begin their lessons learned discussion. So talking about scoring methodologies and the comments received. I expect that the planning liaisons and all of you will probably be talking to each other about how things went at each council individually as well as across the region. So the next call for local projects is scheduled for January of 2022. The final approval process, councils and CDOT are working on their tip changes now. Those will go to the MPO Policy Committee and CMAP Board for approval on October 14th, and that will mark the official start of those new FY21 to 25 local programs. Just because I have the floor, I do want to say thank you to the planning liaisons. Thank you to all of you mayors. Kicking off a new process is never easy, but just kudos to everyone across the region. There were good discussions. I think a great pool of project applications, and I'm very excited to see these projects get implemented throughout the region. So thank you, everybody.
Well, on behalf of the Council of Mayors, I would just like to thank CAMA and all the PLs for this report. I think this was very enlightening to see how much is now being done out there. And when you put it all together in a total package, it really gives you a dynamic impression of what the CMAP organization is all about and all the good things that it's out here doing and helping to create. And some of this obviously is long-term in its planning, and the fact that we've got somebody that in the presence of CMAP that overwatches all this and oversees it so that you can begin a project and in 3 to 5 to 6, 7 years, you can make sure that the thing is going to get built. That says a lot for the region that we have this ability to have this good communications and planning aspects that really set us up to do some good stuff, and we are doing it. So I'm very proud to be associated with somebody who does this much progressive stuff, and thanks to everybody involved here because this really does make a difference in how good our region is. So thank you very much. Our next presentation is going to be the Local Government Network and COVID-19 Response Survey. Patrick Day is going to provide an overview of the CMAP's new Local Government Network Initiative and summarize the results of the agency's recent COVID-19 Regional Recovery Survey. Patrick.
Thank you, Mayor Schilke. Today, I'm going to be providing information for the committee on a new initiative that the agency has undertaken, as well as providing a bit of summary on the first action that the Local Government Network took to distribute and gain a good response for the COVID-19 Regional Survey. So briefly, the network has essentially matched CMAP staff with each of the 284 municipalities in 7 counties, and it applies traditional methods to provide personal, clear communication. It's a known person to answer questions about CMAP and better connect CMAP resources to each of these local governments. And in that way, it's consistent with ON2 2050 recommendations to establish more communication and promote coordination to achieve local and regional goals. And it's a two-way street. There's benefit to the local governments as well as CMAP staff. It's our feeling that the more in touch municipalities are in understanding the culture of their assigned municipalities, that local understanding will help inform more, will result in more informed agency products. So it's each staff is assigned several municipalities. We did a survey internally to see where people have existing relationships, where people are from, where they understand things best, or have an interest in establishing a new relationship. So for instance, Mayor Schilke is matched with Sherry Kane, a better liaison to CMAP I don't think you could hope for, but that is your person who can connect you with the author of recent research you might have seen in the weekly, or if you have any questions, they'll route you to an answer in an efficient way. So it has the long-term benefits as I've described, and it really was kickstarted. It was something that we wanted to get off the ground, but there was an emergent need with the onset of the pandemic. and it really became a need to have data on what were the increased expenditures that municipalities were experiencing, and have some information on what were the forecasted strategies to combat some of those effects and the reduced revenue. So as part of the City of Chicago's COVID-19 Recovery Task Force, the survey was developed, and we rolled it out on a Thursday morning and asked for responses by a Monday morning. And I don't know about you, but that seems pretty quick. If I was greeted with that just in a blank email and said, hey, Monday morning, if we could get it, thanks. That wouldn't be met that well, but through the local government network with a more personal reach out, we actually had a very good response rate. And part of that is just partners understanding what the emergent need was. But we heard from 67% of the region's municipalities, 191, which is very good. And I think it speaks to the effectiveness of that traditional, but very effective complement of a personal reach out. So that's who we heard from over a quick period of time, and it served to help establish those ongoing relationships as well as gather very helpful data. So I'll give a brief snapshot on two areas of the survey, which are budgetary impacts, as well as some responses on what were the methods that municipalities intended to engage in to help businesses in recovery and revitalization, as well as residents who found themselves out of work as a result of the pandemic. So I'm looking at the screen just to make sure.
Sorry about that, Pat. Had a little bit of a hiccup.
Hiccups are all right. While we're pausing, I'll just say that, I'm sorry if I am a bit overdressed. I am in a suit today. Thought I'd cycle that in with my active wear because I was a little concerned there were going to be permanent creases in these suits I have hanging in my closet. And frankly, I wanted to see if it still fit. Okay, here we are. Responses by county. Again, overall, 67% of municipalities, and we saw a good response across all municipalities. Each counties came back with at least a third, and some much higher than that. On to the budgetary impacts. First off, the overwhelming response, 75.4%, isn't going to be surprising that municipalities are feeling their budgets strained under the COVID-19 pandemic. So just as a baseline, that was definitely confirmed. Moving on to the next question. During phase 4, how was your organization considering addressing revenue loss while serving the needs of the community? The top answer was to delay capital projects, followed closely by delay equipment purchases, utilize cash reserves, and then hiring freeze. And I'll mention that these top 4 were uniform across all counties. Those were the top 4 responses within each individual county as well. So moving on just a bit more detail to show you some of these numbers. And I'll mention that I'm providing just a brief snapshot for you today, given time constraints. There will be a full report issued later this month that has summary description of all questions that were answered within the survey. So the first is that over 79% of municipalities were considering delaying capital projects. Again, uniform across all counties. And then moving on to the next slide. Equipment purchases delayed. Followed by the next slide. Hiring freezes and reducing personnel. There's quite a drop off there. 69% were considering hiring freezes. Then it drops to 43% for reducing personnel. And then after that, I wanted to highlight some non-majority responses to the same question to just highlight something that might be ripe for discussion at some point, that there were 30% of municipalities considering elimination of services, and only 25% considering shared services. And that might be a result of lack of resources or just an unknown entity of sharing services. But I thought it was interesting to show these alongside one another, where one is a potential strategy to mitigate those reduced revenues while still providing the service, right next to elimination of the service. So that's just something for future consideration. Recovery and revitalization, we had questions related to what could potentially be undertaken by the municipality to support local businesses. And at that stage, again, I'll remind that this was early June, but overwhelmingly the top response was to waive late fees or penalties during the pandemic or shortly thereafter, and to suspend utility shutoff. Followed by an interesting one, marketing support. That was selected by the majority of responders. And then finally, what methods is your organization considering to support residents who are suddenly out of work? Two options that were the same for local businesses were also the top two, and by a wide margin, for supporting residents. And those are suspending utility shutoff as well as waiving utility late fees. So with that snapshot, there will be a slide with my name on it. And I'll thank you for your time. I'll accept any questions you have now, or if you are interested in further discussion of survey results, please feel free to reach out to me. Or if you would like any more information on the local government network, I feel that this is a group that is pretty looped in to CMAP resources and is pretty well connected. But if you have any questions on who your liaison is through the local government network, or what your preferred contact is, please let me know.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
In your research, when people talk about losing their jobs and then summarily forgiving fees and things of that nature at the municipal level, how do you verify whether or not somebody is actually telling you the truth? Because everybody could tell you that they're laid off. How would you know? How are municipalities doing that?
I think that's a great question that we didn't capture that level of detail on how you operationalize what's being considered in the survey, but that's something I think for future follow-up as CMAP is seeking to identify the good case studies and give that best practice guidance for how you actually make some of those considered practices workable. So I don't know the answer to that. I think there could be some documentation, and I think some of the others on the call might be able to say what they're accepting as documentation. I'd be interested to see what's working for that myself. Yes.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, thank you, Patrick, for your innovative ideas and putting this into place. I think there's a lot to be gained from this whole experience, and I think CMAP is certainly on the right track in helping us understand and find out some of these answers, because this is just a great communications tool that we have that I think one of us can help the other and vice versa, and it's good that we're going to have a coordinated effort at the CMAP level to do this. So thank you for heading that up. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to the legislative update, and obviously this is one that's probably in the face of everybody on the call here as far as, you know, what's going to happen in the next sessions of the Illinois General Assembly. And Gordon, why don't you start us off? And obviously I'm ready to pontificate at the end of this myself, so go ahead.
Can you hear me, everyone? Good morning. I really don't have much of a report to give other than, the Illinois General Assembly is trying to figure things out like everyone else is. They don't plan on returning to the Capitol until veto session, which is the week following the general election, and then the first week in December. I anticipate that there will be a lot of discussion about, trying to sort out, local revenues, state revenues, whatever resources they need to, support their coffers. But at this point in time, there's not really much going on. They are all concentrating on elections and just kind of riding out the wave that they passed a budget that doesn't really have, sufficient revenues to support it. I don't really have much to say other than that. If you've got specific questions, I'd be happy to try to address them.
Do we have any questions for Gordon? Okay, I'm going to just stand on my soapbox here for a minute and make a couple of comments. I got to tell you, I am quite concerned about where the Illinois General Assembly is going and how quickly or unquickly they are going to get there. It is a very disconcerting situation when you sit down with a group of mayors, which I've had the opportunity in other forums here in the last few weeks to talk about things that they're seeing and not seeing, specifically coming from the state and federal government. And the federal thing is a whole different mantra that I'm not going to jump into today. But at the state level, we got somebody on the phone here with us. Where I want to go here is just suggest that what is happening here is something that we as the mayors in the region really need to get our face into. And what I've undertaken to do in my area is I'm looking at the opportunity to have a whole new set of legislators elected to the General Assembly from my area. So I'm not being discriminatory. I'm one at a time, I'm inviting each one of the candidates, Republican or Democrat, to come to Batavia, or I go to them and we go to lunch. And I just let them know my feelings on where we're going with the state government. And what I'm specifically harking to them about is, what is the future of the local government distributing fund coming from the state of Illinois? Now, those of you who, like myself, have been around for a while can probably remember that when the 1970 Constitution was created, there was a provision in there that 12% of the revenue from the state, and then to be enacted state income tax, would be distributed to Illinois municipalities on a per capita basis. And that ended up being quite a nice sum of money for all of us to have. Now, as things have emerged over the last few years, that 12% now, as near as anybody can figure, is someplace down to about 5 or 6%. And I guess the question I'm asking those running for office around me is, well, what's your position on this state income tax, and how much do you think we should be getting, and are you going to be willing to stand there and fight for us to hold on to that? Because I know there's a lot of cities that are highly dependent on that pot of money, and I think there is some serious question that exists as to the ability of the state of Illinois to continue to fund itself the way it is. So these are rough times from a political perspective as far as financing your government. I know there's nobody on this call that doesn't have the same concerns that I do. And I just think that if there's ever been a time, given the COVID thing and everything else that we've been hit with here in the last few weeks or months, that we as the mayors need to stand up and start asking some questions kind of one-on-one, not putting anybody in a public spot, but just letting all those who are seeking to represent us in the Illinois General Assembly understand where we think that they should be going. And I suppose you could even take that further and talk to your congressional candidates. An interesting tidbit I'm hearing about the congressional candidates from our area is that apparently there's a population shift going on in Illinois here, in which we are losing population and others are gaining. And so I am being told that after the 2020 census, we may very well lose a congressional seat. They're going to have to reapportion the region and come up with some new lines that proportion us into whatever we've gotten ourselves into here. So that's yet another apple on the table that somebody's got to have to bite into. But there's a lot to talk about. In all my years that I've been involved here, I don't ever remember a time with such intensity and probably serious questions before us from a political perspective as we have at the moment. And so I guess I'll end this by saying I'm very thankful that we have people like Gordon down at the Illinois General Assembly kind of watching over what's happening, because if we ever needed to have somebody in place to kind of keep an eye on what's going on here, it's now. And we've always tried to temper the politics of the Council of Mayors to not get ourselves into any kind of a bipartisan thing. And I'm certainly not advocating we do that now, but I think it's probably incumbent that we all educate those from both parties as to what we see are our problems and try to seek their cooperative spirit in helping us work with specifically the financing of our governments and how we are going to finance our governments, because all of us are then faced with the next one that hits you about, well, I don't want my property tax raised. And so that's another great question. But I think we need to start here with our friends at the Illinois General Assembly and where they are going to go in the next session as to how we're going to fund some things around here. And I hope that everybody gives their local representatives some earful of ideas, because that's what they're going to need when they get down to Springfield. So I'll step off my soapbox. Anybody want to step onto it?
I'll say something, Jeff.
Please do.
You know, I was unaware of the 12% issue. I remember it being a different number, but it seems kind of odd that we can't change the pension laws, but we can ignore the 12%. How does that work?
Good question, isn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, it's why do we have a constitution? And then we have a constitution and we make changes, and then apparently you can just ignore them whenever it's convenient for you. I don't understand that. I would hope that all the mayors on here are thinking about that, because they're telling us we can't do this, we can't do that to straighten out pension issues, but apparently you can steal money from us, you know, pretty much anytime you want to. And I don't get that, especially since it's been done at the through the constitutional amendments. I don't get it.
I appreciate you adding to my comments. I think what you just said is right to the point. I would just make the observation, if you study the issue a little bit, it's not restricted to one party or the other. I think both of them have had involvement in those types of moves during their controls of the governor's chair and state legislature as it's emerged over the last few years and everything else. I shouldn't say few years, for many years, since the Constitution was done in 1970. You know, that's 50 years old now, and you know, it's there's a provision in there that I think it's every 10 years we have to have a referendum to see if we want to reconvene the Constitutional Convention. I'm not so sure that it may not be a good idea to do that, but that's just me speaking. But there's a lot going on here, and I just want the Council of Mayors to be aware of it. And certainly, if you're starting to hear anything that you think has some state implications, I'd ask you that you feel free, number one, to contact Gordon Smith and let him know what you're thinking. And then maybe at our future meetings as we go forward here, we should say something, you know, don't be afraid to bring it up, and we should be talking, I think, about this, because I think this is at a degree of intensity and concern that we as mayors need to be stepping up and letting the world know our concerns, specifically as it impacts the transportation arena, which is such a vital component of what we're all about and what we're trying to do for our communities. Anybody else?
Hey, Mayor, this is Gordon again.
Yes.
Mayor, what I was going to remind you all of too is this is the time of year that each one of your councils will start developing their individual legislative agendas. And this is a perfect time to, you know, emphasize your specific needs locally. But also, you know, we are constantly in contact with the different councils, so we are aware of that. And so we compile all that information so we have it available to share with members of the General Assembly as well. But I just wanted to remind you, this is the time that you guys will be developing your individual legislative agendas, and this is an opportunity for you to take advantage of that process.
Thank you. Okay, and I got one item of other business. I forget the exact which one it was, but at a previous meeting that we had, we pointed out that the three officers have been serving on the STP selection committee since it was recreated here a couple of years back, and that includes myself, Mayor Rockingham, and Mayor Williams. And we had suggested that it would be probably not a bad idea that we begin to rotate some of us out of that and let some other mayors off of our board here step up and be on the STP selection committee. And I've suggested to the other two officers that as we step off, we may want to just continue to attend the meeting so that everybody knows what's going on. But because that is it's very well run, and I don't see any problem with it, but I just think that we need to keep that in focus, and we all should have our hand on what's happening in the STP because there is a lot of money floating around in there. So I'm going to be the first one that's going to step off the committee or the body, and then Mayor Williams and Mayor Rockingham will follow me in successive years here. I put the word out. What we've tried to do with that is in our officers for this group, it's worked out, and it's been this way now for a number of years. We try to keep the three officers kind of spaced out throughout the region. So we have somebody from the south, we have somebody from the center, and we have somebody from the north. And Mayor Rockingham's coming from the north, I'm central, and Mayor Williams is south. And I would hope as this group continues, when all of us leave, that this idea continue on, because I think there is a sense of geography and regionalism here that needs to be recognized and shared. And by this way, we've got all three at the table. So I asked those in the central part of the region if somebody would be willing to step forward. I've had two contact me and say that they would be interested. And so I'm going to make a final decision here in the next few days as to which one I will select. I will put out a memo to all of you, but I want you to know that's coming. And then we will probably do another one next year and another one the year after. But that's kind of there. I just wanted to give an update as to what we were doing with that. And we will, let you know that we should be, doing something on that in the near future. I need to ask, is there any public comment? And I need to announce by a message I had here that if you came in late, please let the staff know that you've been on the call so we have a proper attention as to who all was here and who wasn't. If there's no other public comment, if we have nobody's registered online that said anything or. Okay. As a result of that, if there's no other business before this committee, I'm going to adjourn the meeting, and I will look forward to seeing you or at least talking to you all on October 27th, 2020. And again, if anybody has any comments at any time, feel free to contact myself or any of the staff members. Certainly Aaron is available, and the whole gang is here to talk about what it is we need to do. And so I just want to thank everybody that's been involved in it and appreciate the good efforts. And our next meeting will be October 27th at 9:30. So I'll adjourn the meeting and thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.